Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon. 1923's finale debunks a Jack Dutton Yellowstone fan theory, and I'm grateful. I'm glad 1923 Season 2's finale debunked a theory about the fate of Jack Dutton, Darren Mann. 1923's epic ending closed out Taylor Sheridan's Prohibition-era Yellowstone prequel with an action-packed and tragic 2-hour finale. Spencer Dutton, Brandon Sklenar, made his long-awaited return to Montana to save the Yellowstone Dutton Ranch and exact his revenge on the villainous Thomas Whitfield, Timothy Dalton. What Spencer and the Duttons didn't know until the chaos was over was what happened to Jack. In 1923 Season 2's penultimate episode, The Mountain Teeth of Monsters, Jack Dutton was killed by Thomas Whitfield's men. Jack foolishly abandoned his post guarding his aunt Cara Dutton, Helen Mirren, and his pregnant wife, Elizabeth Stratton, Michelle Randolph. Jack hoped to join his uncle Jacob Dutton, Harrison Ford, and protect Spencer upon his arrival by train to Livingston, Montana. But Jack was shot dead after he made the mistake of trusting Livestock Commission hires who were secretly working for Whitfield. After Jack Dutton was killed in 1923's penultimate episode, his body was dragged away into the woods. It seemed Jack would be taken to the newly discovered lawless area between Wyoming and Montana that Yellowstone dubbed the train station. 1923 Season 2 revealed Thomas Whitfield originated the train station as a way to dispose of his enemies. Naturally, there was fear that Whitfield's goons would make Jack the first Dutton to be the victim of the train station. Thankfully, Jack wasn't taken to the train station after all. 1923 Season 2's finale revealed Cara sent Yellowstone cowboys on the trail to Livingston to find Jack, and Whitfield's men had abandoned Jack's body in the woods. While this was a callous move, sending Jack to the train station would have been even worse. At least Jack's body was brought back to the Yellowstone so he could be properly buried in the Dutton's family graveyard, along with Spencer's deceased wife, Alexandra Dutton, Julia Schlepfer. Jack Dutton's death in 1923's penultimate episode was a genuine surprise because of his untapped potential that sadly will never be realized. Jack was a capable cowboy and a willing recipient of his Uncle Jacob and Aunt Cara's wisdom, but he was also naive, impulsive, and immature for his age. Jack's love story with Elizabeth felt like puppy love, with Elizabeth grasping the very real and adult realities of being a wife and future parent much faster than Jack. Instead, Jack's loyalties were to his cowboy lifestyle first, his wife second. Obviously, Jack had a lot of growing up to do, and 1923's fans wanted to see him mature alongside Elizabeth and their child. Unfortunately, this is the Yellowstone saga, and more Dutton men die violently than live to ripe old age like Spencer and Jacob. Jack was gunned down like his father, John Dutton, James Badge Dale, and so many Duttons that will follow. Jack was not meant to be the heroic Dutton he imagined himself to be, and he's a part of Dutton's tragic lineage of family members who died for the Yellowstone. One naturally feels deeply for Elizabeth Strafford's profound loss when she buries Jack Dutton at the end of 1923 Season 2's finale. Elizabeth became pregnant for the second time, and she went through with her intentions to leave the brutal violence of Montana and return to Boston. Elizabeth hoped Jack would choose her and their child over the Yellowstone. Even if Jack lived, Elizabeth rightfully sensed Jack would never abandon his family, even for the new one he was making with Elizabeth. Jack Dutton's legacy lives on in his child with Elizabeth, and their story will potentially continue in 1944, the next Taylor Sheridan Yellowstone prequel. 1944 could see Jack and Elizabeth's son or daughter, who will be about 20 years old, come to Montana to join the Dutton's Yellowstone legacy. The senseless tragedy of Jack Dutton's death in 1923 would have been magnified if Jack had been sent to the train station. And I'm grateful Jack didn't become the second victim of Yellowstone's most dreaded final destination. For months, I clung to a fan theory that had sunk its teeth deep into the heart of Yellowstone lore. The belief that Jack Dutton was the true father of the modern-day Dutton lineage, the direct ancestor of John Dutton, i.e., Kevin Costner's character in Yellowstone. It was a theory that made sense. Jack was brave, fiercely loyal, and bore that unmistakable Dutton grit. He seemed like the obvious choice, the heir to the sprawling Montana legacy. But then 1923's finale hit, shattering that assumption in one swift, beautiful stroke. And honestly, I'm grateful. Let's rewind. When Taylor Sheridan introduced us to the prequel 1923, it quickly became more than just a placeholder between 1883 and Yellowstone. It was a sprawling, emotional Western epic of its own, filled with heartbreak, revolution, and a battle for survival on the edge of America's changing identity. Jack Dutton, portrayed with youthful intensity by Darren Mann, emerged as a fan favorite. He had that raw cowboy charisma that felt like it could have come straight from Kevin Costner's weathered boots. He was brave, he was passionate. He loved Elizabeth like a man who understood the stakes of legacy. So naturally, the fandom whispered, Jack is the father. Jack is the future. Jack is John's grandfather. The math almost lined up. The vibe certainly did, and for a while, it made sense. Jack's narrative arc felt tailor-made for inheritance. He was a protector, a fighter, the man on the land. The theory gained traction on Reddit threads, YouTube deep dives, and late-night discussions among Yellowstone devotees like me, where timelines and bloodlines were traced like ancient family trees etched in stone. But 1923's finale decided to throw us all for a loop. Not only did it gently steer the story away from Jack's presumed destiny, it gave us a far more unexpected, and perhaps more profound, revelation that the real forebear of the Dutton Empire we know today isn't Jack, but Spencer Dutton. Yes, Spencer. The wounded soldier, the lost brother. The man who went to war and came back broken, only to find healing in the most unlikely of places. A love affair with the dazzling and resilient Alexandra. Their arc was tender, brutal, and globetrotting, an odyssey of love and trauma that proved Duttons aren't forged only by cattle and bullets, but by sacrifice and reinvention. In the finale, everything snapped into place. Jack and Elizabeth, who had seemed like the golden couple of the ranch, are dealt a devastating blow, a miscarriage. The final scene, quiet and somber, shows Elizabeth cradling her loss and Jack staring at the horizon, the weight of unfulfilled legacy heavy on his shoulders. It was a heart-wrenching, softly delivered truth. Jack may never father the next Dutton line. And just like that, the theory crumbled. But here's the twist. It didn't feel like a betrayal. It felt like a gift. Because in unraveling the neat, expected future we'd written for Jack, 1923 gave us something deeper. A chance to understand that the Dutton legacy isn't about linear inheritance. It's about spirit. And few characters embody that resilient spirit like Spencer Dutton. Spencer, who carries the scars of World War I not just on his skin but in his soul. Spencer, who hunts man-eating lions in Africa as a way to outrun his nightmares. Spencer, who opens himself to love again with Alexandra, only to have fate constantly try to pull them apart. Spencer, who, despite every obstacle, starts the long, brutal journey back to Montana, not just to fight for his family, but to remember who he is. In a show built on stoicism and rugged independence, Spencer's vulnerability is radical. And that's what makes his potential fatherhood, his place in the family tree, so poetic. If he and Alexandra do go on to have children, and the finale certainly implies that possibility, their lineage won't just be one of cattle brands and frontier justice. It'll be one of healing, of hope, of survival after suffering. The finale flips the script. It says, legacy isn't always the most obvious path. Sometimes it's not the cowboy who stays, but the wanderer who returns, who becomes the root of something new. And Jack still matters. Immensely. He's still a Dutton through and through. He still fights for the land. His loyalty is unquestioned. But his story now feels like one of protection, not procreation. He might become a guiding hand, an uncle to Spencer's children, or a stabilizing force on the ranch. His role isn't diminished, it's reframed. It's easy to fall in love with fan theories. They give us a sense of control in the chaotic universe of long-form storytelling. But there's something thrilling and humbling about being wrong, especially when the truth we're given instead is richer, more emotionally complex, and refreshingly unpredictable.